candidate in Kansas's Republican primary for governor. At this point, well, take a look. Here's the results. Kobach leading by 952 votes. Jeff Collier, you see right there, that's the incumbent Republican governor. He'd been the lieutenant governor. Sam Brown back left. Collier takes over, sort of an unelected incumbent there, unelected as governor at least. Here's the key, though, to keep in mind when you look at that. The outstanding vote in Kansas is almost all in Johnson County. We talk about those more upscale suburbs, college-educated, all that stuff. We talked about them in Ohio. That's what it is, right outside Kansas City in Kansas. Collier leading in the vote that's been counted there by 13 points. So certainly on paper, you'd look at that and say maybe advantage Collier despite being behind there, but a very close race there in Kansas. Joining me now, Jason Johnson, the politics editor at TheRoot.com and an MSNBC contributor. David Jolly and John Podhoretz are also back with us. Jason, let me start with you. We know the president, he's going to try to find a way to declare victory, I guess, with any of these. He's doing it in Ohio tonight. Maybe the Republican Party will be happy with that one. In Kansas, though, if he gets his way, if Kobach were to win this thing, that is a result the Republican establishment doesn't want to see.
Well, yeah, look, the president still has power, right? He is still the biggest, loudest voice for the Republican Party, and he can claim some victories tonight, and he has proven that he Kobach, with all the controversies in his background and the corruption and everything else like that, being a Trumpist works well in a Republican primary. It may not be the best thing for you in a general election. I also think this is really important to understand, just sort of mathematically as a political scientist here. Look, the vast majority of these elections, these special elections, they are in gerrymandered districts, right? So it's generally not a situation where in a special election you're going to be able to beat the incumbent party. The Democrats actually haven't won very many federal elections with these special elections. They've been winning at the state level. But when you can break down a margin from 10 to 16 points to single digits, knowing that there's going to be a rematch in just 2 months, every single Republican has to be concerned heading into the fall, and Donald Trump can't visit all the districts he needs to visit in order to stave off a blue wave.
It's interesting, you know, John, we talk about the Trump effect. The obvious Trump effect is the fact we had a competitive race in Ohio's 12th congressional district tonight, a place a Democrat hadn't won since 1980. But in terms of the result we're seeing tonight, the president going in there on Saturday, making some noise in this one, how do you look at those results and weigh the Trump effect in this one? Okay, so the way you Trump is causing Democratic enthusiasm, right? So this election is not, the Ohio election is kind of a joke. Like, it's happening in August. They have to run again in November with this recount stuff. September we might have an answer. Who knows when? Who knows when this guy? Right. Who knows when the winner will be sworn in? He'll serve for 6 weeks and then run again, right? So the whole thing was a proxy. I mean, whether or not Garrett Haig said they were talking about Social Security and issues and all that, but nobody in the district was fooled. It was a proxy race, right? So two things happened. So the Democratic enthusiasm was huge, and there was a Trump effect almost certainly positively for Balderson. So the question I would have for Dave Jolly in this circumstance is, you're in trouble, you're a Republican in trouble, even if it's a district that looks pretty, you know, split, maybe you want Trump. Maybe your only hope is ginning up. That's the question. Kasich made it. The governor there made it sound like Balderson maybe didn't want Trump. Sure. What would you have said in his position?
Listen, I think, and we need to dissect President Trump's tweet because, based on electoral science, it's absurd. First of all, it's important to understand that early voting is a demographic, a political demographic all to itself. Donald Trump did not shift this election. I knew in my first race I was going to lose the early vote because I knew the performance of early voters versus those on Election Day. I do think, to John's point, this is fascinating because Donald Trump might say, and we may see in the numbers, that he created enthusiasm and he brought more Republicans out. But then you also have to measure how many Democrats came out of concern and anxiety to oppose Donald Trump. The reality is Trump's impact on 2018 is obvious. Republicans are losing. Republicans are having to compete where they never have before. Republicans are underperforming by 5 and 10 points, and that is because of Donald Trump. The Donald Trump effect is not winning close races like tonight. It's losing and undermining what has been 10 years of successful Republican politics.
Okay, but here's my question is, you got 2 weeks to go. I mean, Barbara Comstock, who's in the Virginia, you know, is in the Virginia suburbs, is maybe not the right candidate for this. You got 2 weeks to go. You're down 3 or 4. Your only hope is somehow ginning up Republican turnout. You got to gin it up, you got to gin it up. The Trump effect may already be there, right? The Trump effect has already stimulated the Democrats. If you're one of these moderate, you know, sort of like establishment Republicans, that's what I'm asking. Do you want him there last week of October? That I don't know. I'm just saying.
It depends on the district, not the candidate's ideology. Yeah. Here's what I would say. The best course would be to remain silent on Donald Trump and just not ask him to come to the district. I was actually a Republican who stood on the House floor, called him to drop out of the race. I said, the guy's bad for the country, bad for the party. I'll never support him. And my Republican base will never let me live that down. Now, that's fine. I was willing to accept those consequences. If you're a Barbara Comstock, you can't distance yourself from the president, but you don't have to embrace him, particularly not in that district.
Well, let me flip the question around, Jason. Yeah, if you, from a Democratic candidate standpoint, maybe, because it sounds like the president wants to be out there this fall, wants to be very visible this fall. So if you're one of those Democrats trying to unseat a Republican and the president's coming to your district a week or 2 out, are you sitting there saying, uh-oh, he's going to get the Republicans in my district fired up? Or are you saying, oh, he's going to get the Democrats fired up?
You're saying this is going to raise me some money, and I have a very good chance that he's going to cause as much damage as he does good. I agree with David. Here's the other thing you have to remember. You saw this in the 12th district, and you've seen this in other places. First off, Donald Trump shows up wherever he wants to go. You may not be in a position of being able to ask him to show up because the president decides when he wants to show up. Sometimes he even names the wrong candidate when he comes to a district. So I don't know that if it's 2 weeks in October, if you really want to be the person to bring in Donald Trump, he may not show up, he may not stay on record, he may not stay on message, and worse, what kinds of messaging sacrifices will you have had to make at the altar of Trump in the previous 3 weeks to make yourself attractive enough that he's going to want to make that swing? I'm with David. I probably wouldn't want to bother with him if I'm in a marginal district. You run on local issues. You work on the fact that you've been an incumbent. You work on the fact that you care about the local community. You don't want to make this a national race if you're a Republican right now.
All right, panel, stay with us. And coming up, whatever the ultimate result in Ohio 12, there is plenty of reason for Democrats, as we've been saying tonight,